From training camp.
If you want a job now, you got to work hard.
To the preseason.
Scampers down to the 32-yard line.
Through the playoffs.
He's in! Touchdown!
And into the offseason.
To be able to get the best players, it's a critical time for us.
It's always Colts season. This is Colts Corner with Kevin Bowen.
Feeble. That's a word I found this morning as I went to thesaurus.com. Easy for me to say, right? Boy, Eddie Garrison. Yeah, pathetic, pitiful. Any of those adjectives apply here. Feeble was a word that I found. How about woeful? How about disturbing? I didn't think that was a disturbing performance. That's a good way to describe it, right? Ugly. 16-10 doesn't begin to tell the full story of that one. Malik Willis beats the Colts. And, yeah, just really, really disappointing. 0-2. Start the season. Is this where you say that last year's division champ started 0-2? Is this where you say the 2014 Colts started 0-2? Glass half full early, right?
I mean, I had them 0-2 to start the year anyway.
Look at that.
But
I had them 1-1. But I think, again, that might be a conversation for Wednesday, just how it's looked so far for 120 minutes. But right here, we'll break it down. Thank you for letting us cope with you here as we share what we didn't like, what we did like. I guess there are some things there, and then plenty of Twitter questions to get to, and the tone of those questions about what you'd expect. Eddie, I'll start here. When you do continuity, when you do it with personnel, when you do it with coaching staff, you expect to start a season fast.
Mm-hmm.
You expect September not to be where you lose to a quarterback that's been there for 19 days or a first-year defensive coordinator. And here you are now at 0-2. I would argue the 120 minutes of football, there's not been much to really be super pleased about by any means. If I'm Jim Irsay, I sit there and think, okay, Chris Ballard, remind me of your blueprint again. Okay, where's run defense in that blueprint? That's a response from a historically bad effort. I thought you got out-coached pretty thoroughly yesterday.
Again.
Yeah, and even more. I mean, again, I don't want to speak in hyperbole, and I'm trying to rack my brain on last year, Eddie. I think it might be the most out-coached game in the Steichen era. And, you're still getting gifts. I mean, the Jacobs fumble on the doorstep of the goal line. I mean, hell, a gift of Malik Willis starting. Green Bay missed a field goal that was, somewhat manageable, I think, from a distance standpoint. I guess it was shorter than Matt Gay's miss. And yet, once Green Bay got to 10 or 13, I think they felt like, oh my gosh, we just need to not lose the game from here on out, which is such a sad thing to watch unfold. I do this often. There are big plays to keep an eye on. I'll get to 3rd and 1 here and the usage of Jonathan Taylor in just a second. But I did think a big sequence occurred late half. The Colts deferred. I agreed with that decision. I think you want Malik Willis out there early to have to prove himself. Of course, the Colts did little in putting Malik Willis in such moments. But they're late half, you're down 10-0, and you're kind of starting to move it. I think you're near midfield, 3rd and 8, A.D. Mitchell drop.
Mm-hmm.
Green Bay then throws white flag up for the rest of the first half. The Colts throw up their own white flag, don't take any timeouts to end the first half. It was really just kind of a sad way to end the first half, neither team wanting to try anything. And then you come out to start the second half, and, that's why I thought it was such a big opportunity. You're getting the ball late half, you have the opportunity to start the third quarter, and again, you move it a little bit. You get near midfield, it's 4th and 4. Didn't think Richardson threw the best ball, but at the same time, I would call that a drop by Jonathan Taylor. I mean, who knows if Taylor catches it? I don't know. It looked like there's a Green Bay defender right there. But nonetheless, drop on 3rd and 8 by Mitchell, drop by Taylor on 4th and 4. And that was probably oh shit, this is happening. Really happening. If you score there, 10-3, 10-7, now Malik Willis is at least sweating. And yet you didn't make him sweat whatsoever all afternoon long. So plenty to get to. Eddie, you got anything big picture, I guess big game-wise, before we break it down individually?
Yeah, when you opened up the podcast, you said the Colts lost to Malik Willis, and I want to correct you because my opinion was the Colts lost to Matt LaFleur. Mm-hmm. And a couple things that stood out to me was just that you already talked about how out-coached Shane Steichen, certainly Gus Bradley, and Jim Bob Cooter were in this loss to Green Bay. The one thing that stood out to me the most is something that what Green Bay has and the Colts don't. On offense, the Green Bay Packers have speed, and they utilize sideline to sideline from the time that the ball was kicked off, and that's something the Colts defense apparently lacks as well, and that was pretty much put on tape against them yesterday. And then once Green Bay started stretching the field horizontally. And the next thing you know, you see Josh Jacobs gashing you vertically. Yeah. And I just felt like the Green Bay Packers offense and that offensive line came out with the nastiness. And it's the second consecutive week where I'm starting to question, is there any toughness on this Colts team?
All very fair. I said 23-13, I think, when we did the pod on Wednesday. I got it down to a one possession thought by the end of the week. Some of that was a little injury report related. And honestly, some of it was like, I should probably give Matt LaFleur a little bit more credit.
Mm-hmm.
I think he's a pretty well thought of head coach, but I think he was very open-minded, of course, to having to really overhaul a lot of what they did offensively and commit to a much different looking offense. And they certainly did that, and they executed great from the start, and that was key, because if you don't start that way, I don't think you can survive. Nope. I think the starts of games with backup quarterbacks is so important. And even if it's a little thing of like Malik Willis settling into that game, that allows him to like look at Romeo Doubs and Jalen Jones late and say, hey, I just need to put this ball on target and see what happens. And when he needed to make a throw or two, and I use that in the singular form, Eddie, he did. And he never, name me one time you thought Malik Willis was getting ready to turn the ball over.
Never.
And that's what you didn't do against Jake Browning enough. You didn't do against Taylor Heineke enough. You didn't do against P.J. Walker enough. And you sure as hell didn't do it against Malik Willis yesterday. Let's get into it.
Let's start with the coaching. Oftentimes, when we talked about this, certainly last season, in the early parts of this year, I'm going to start with the defense. You talk about getting after the quarterback when it's a backup quarterback or when it's a rookie quarterback. And the Colts didn't do that at all. They didn't get after Malik Willis in the passing when they did attempt to pass, and they didn't really get any penetration up front.
Yeah, both sides of the ball. This is all facets, certainly offensively and defensively, and we'll look at them kind of individually here in a second. But I just thought overall, again, really, really outcoached. Continuity means you start faster. Continuity with all the coordinators means you play faster. And yet you get beat by a team that has had their quarterback for 19 days. And they also had a first-year defensive coordinator. So, to me, I just thought it was heavily, heavily outcoached. And again, both sides of it. Yes, you got gashed up front. We all saw that from the start. But Eddie, who would have thought these stats at the start of the game? 2 of 9 on third down for the Colts. Green Bay, 10 of 17. Green Bay had 8 real drives. They didn't try at the end of the first half. They didn't try at the end of the game.
Mm-hmm.
8 real drives. They scored on half of them. The Colts had 10 drives, and they scored on 2 of them. Again, all of it, offensively, defensively, you just got really, really outcoached. The steep drop-off to Malik Willis wasn't that felt. And their ability to settle into the game right out of the gate, I thought was, told you a whole lot. And again, you get a golden gift. You get the ultimate 7-point swing there with the fumble, and you still aren't able to take advantage of it. So, again, in the second era, the most thoroughly outcoached I've seen the Colts.
And then, you just hit on it there with the third downs. Every third down it seemed for Green Bay was 3rd and 2, 3rd and 3, 3rd and 4. Every third down for the Colts was 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8. There weren't any real short yard to gain opportunities. And when you're forced in those pass situations, that's not the strength right now of Anthony Richardson. And it was pretty much shed the light again yesterday.
No, it certainly was. Again, just putting themselves into situations where your quarterback can succeed. Individually, we'll get to Richardson in a second, but I didn't think you put him into enough favorable situations either. But that might be the most shocking aspect of there's a level, as crazy as it sounds, it's like a little expectation from the Colts in having issues. I didn't think Malik Willis would cause that. But on the flip side of it, offensively, if you'd have told me at the start of the game, Eddie, Green Bay scores 16. Again, I said 23-16. That's what I had for Green Bay.
Mm-hmm.
I would have thought the Colts could get to 17.
I had 13.
What they give up week 1? 34 for Philly? So,
let's start with this. If I told you a player had 20 attempts for 128 yards, would you say that was the full game? That was the halftime box score for Josh Jacobs.
The wildest stat to me, Eddie, was they had 4 dudes in the opening quarter have a 10-yard rush or longer. How many times do people use 4 different ball carriers in one quarter of a football game? let alone the opening quarter, and let alone 4 different guys with a 10-yard rush with an explosive run.
Yeah.
261, most allowed in the last decade for the Indianapolis Colts. Third longest since the turn of the century. And that is how you respond to what happened week 1. 213 week 1. 261's a response. And you can't have the excuse. What was the excuse last week? We're defending C.J. Stroud in the pass.
Mm-hmm.
None of that is there. Grover Stewart's there. You played your 10 defensive linemen, not getting off blocks, not setting the edge, then missing tackles. I mean, literally, if they left room next to Joe Mixon and Canton after last week, they could put Josh Jacobs' name. Because if these two guys played the Colts defense week in and week out, that's where they'd be. All the numbers are just so crazy. And to get gashed like that sets the tone for the rest of the game. And, yes, Jacobs had 34? Was that his long rush? He had one kind of big one.
That was on one of the first couple drives, right?
We're still not at the 60, 70-yarder, of hey, Sam Darnold's passing stats can look a bit skewed because of what Justin Jefferson did. You can sometimes get that stuff. I mean, sure, 34 is notable, but it was still a routine. Again, different guys doing it to you. And that just forced Willis to settle in. I don't think he threw his first pass. Jot it down somewhere. I don't think he threw his first pass past the line of scrimmage. I think he had maybe one in the first quarter. I think it was a touchdown, honestly. Was the only one. 20 minutes into the game for his first incompletion. You didn't put him into any difficult situations. Malik Willis into the game with a quarterback rating, Eddie, of 126.8. Put that into perspective.
Going into that start, wasn't it 39?
That sounds right. Peyton Manning's career high was 121.
Oh, my goodness.
Malik Willis had 126 yesterday.
It just continues.
Yeah. And, again, I know he threw 14 passes, but I still didn't think you got any sort of playmaking in that area. 14 passes, yes, it's not a lot, but you only got your hand on one of those balls. And now you've had 46 pass attempts in the first 2 weeks.
Is that personnel or is that scheme? Because if you're mainly in zone, you don't put yourself in those kind of situations.
That, but I still think you have chances. Jalen Jones, you've got a one-on-one opportunity with Romeo Doubs. I mean, you couldn't ask for more than that. I mean, that was purely a jump ball.
And then Kenny Moore was a tick late to a pick six.
Right. And again, just those things are just, those opportunities don't happen enough.
Mm-hmm.
And when they've had chances to make those plays, they haven't made them.
Mm-hmm.
And you look at the flip side of it, and opposing teams are getting their hands on a ton of balls
mm-hmm.
for the Colts. So I think that is what's frustrating. There was a Joe Davis quote. Joe Davis, right? Play with Greg Olson.
Yeah.
He had a quote at the end of the first quarter, and I guess he kind of answered his own question. He said something effective like, man, what have you seen from Malik Willis here in this first quarter? And Joe Davis goes, well, he's handed the ball off really well.
Yeah.
And it was so sad but true of yeah, that's about all I know. And he's thrown some balls behind the line of scrimmage that have been very, very good. So run defense, especially Eddie, but just super, super poor from Gus Bradley's unit. And that's how you respond.
Is that more specific to the first half? Because in the second half, he was 12
but
for
I still
23.
I know, but
Speaking of Jacobs.
I know. I part of it, though, is, it's a golfer in 48th place shooting 65 on Sunday. It's, the leading scorer of the Charlotte Hornets last year. It's just, you've got to set the tone from the start.
Mm-hmm.
And that start had no business happening. And yes, once you get in the second half of, there is a can't lose that Green Bay is playing to, I just, that's too much of a Colleen Bowen compliment.
Let's get to the third thing that you did not like, and it starts with the pass catchers. You already alluded to the A.D. Mitchell drop on third down. That would have been an obvious first down for the Colts late in that first half when they needed it. Michael Pittman Jr. had a drop. Alec Pierce had a drop, and then I think you can say Jonathan Taylor had a drop too, but it kind of goes back and forth on that fourth down just because the ball was behind Taylor instead of on the front shoulder like Greg Olson noted, and they certainly did not help Anthony Richardson at all.
Go back to that preseason finale in Cincinnati. That was kind of dress rehearsal like for the Colts. I remember walking away from that thinking, man, you gave your young quarterback no support.
Mm-hmm.
And I walk away from yesterday thinking, outside of Taylor running it, I thought, again, you gave Richardson very little in the support categories.
Yeah.
I know I say pass catchers here. I'd throw in a little bit of the offensive line. I mean, I thought Quentin Nelson had 2 critical penalties. And just in general, you're reliable guys. However you define reliability. They're on the side of your building. They're captains. You pay them a lot of money, whatever. And let's go down the list. Nelson, Kenny Moore, Michael Pittman Jr., Matt Gay. Where?
Mm-hmm.
Where? You know, I mean, the volatility from Richardson, of course. Yes, that's going to be there. We knew that. But you can't have the volatility from the other guys and can't have it to the magnitude of that. So, you know, Richardson week 1 was what, 9 of 19?
Yes.
Yesterday, I think he was 17 of 34.
Yes.
So those are pretty close percentages, right? 50 and like 47, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Those percentages to me are a little different. Like, I didn't think he had any drops in week 1. Maybe I'm forgetting one. You know, yesterday you could make the case he had close to a handful of drop catchable balls from your group. So, you know, pass catchers. I mean, outside Alec Pierce, man, I mean, who has been reliable for you?
You need somebody to step up because, I mean, Michael Pittman Jr.'s faced 2 elite corners through 2 weeks. Derek Stingley last week and then Jair Alexander on Sunday.
And he has done very little to nothing. I think we have some questions about A.D. Mitchell and Twitter questions, but oof, that was a little bit of like, this is why he fell in the draft. I did not like anything. I liked a lot of what I saw out of week 1. There was a lot I did not like. I'll save more of that for Twitter questions.
What about Pittman? We haven't talked about him a lot.
Yeah, you need more there. You need more. I mean, you certainly bring up Stingley, and obviously we saw Derek Stingley last night make a huge play as well. I mean, those are very good corners, but still, you got to have more. I mean, what is it now? Was it 3 for 7 yesterday?
Yeah, 3 for 21 on 7 targets.
Yeah, 7 targets, three catches. So, I mean, you're talking, I think it was 4 for 8 in week 1. I mean, 15 targets and 7 catches. That catch percentage has got to be high because he's not the deep ball dude. He's not
one
Tyreek
catch in week 1 after the first half.
Yeah.
You just had pretty much like 1 target.
Yeah, you got to have more there. You certainly have to have more there. So, yeah, pass catchers would fall into this category.
Do you feel like the RPO game, whether that's, you know, Richardson reading and then getting it on like a slant to Pittman, hasn't been there yet? I feel like it hasn't been there, and I thought that would be something that was like in the bread and butter of the offense.
Yeah, and I just think like with Pittman too, sometimes like the simple screens can be effective.
Yeah.
You know, you brought up kind of the third and distance stuff. Just kind of getting ahead of the chains a little bit, and honestly, Richardson struggles as like a methodical drop back passer. The screen to me would alleviate some of that. So, boy, you need Josh Downs back.
Yeah. Let's transition now to what you did like, the player with 100.
I got one more that I want to throw on the didn't like. I want to save this to the end, and this is kind of a late ad for me, but I like to do these in order of like what I think I really didn't like versus what's kind of a little lesser on that. But I did not like the Anthony Richardson we saw yesterday, and I do think it deserves singular mention, but also mentioning it fourth among the other items that we've laid out so far. And it looked like a young quarterback making, I think, his first kind of true road start. I mean, Lambeau to me is that type of venue. Erratic pressing, too many turnover-worthy plays. You know what? 3 picks, and I know people say, well, the Hail Mary doesn't count. Well, he should have been picked by Quay Walker on the final drive anyway. So 3 interceptions, 2 other balls on the ground. You can't have that out of your quarterback. And, I think we can talk. I hope we're all in agreement here. I can be, when I do these what I liked and what I didn't like, I'm evaluating all this on 60 Minutes of Football on a Sunday.
Yeah.
I'm not talking big picture at all. Save that for Twitter questions. Save that for the Wednesday pod. So if I'm talking here in the Green Bay bubble, I didn't like it. I don't like 2 of 9 on third down from your quarterback. I don't like 1 play on Green Bay's side of the field in the first half, and that 1 play is a pick. Was he pressing down 10-0 already? Was the Alec Pierce pick a press? Was that oh boy, I gotta create something. I think as a quarterback, and again, he needs to be in these game situations because in reality, 10-0 in the NFL, that is not a pressing moment.
No.
Especially not on first down. There's no need for that. And maybe, if he hits Pierce kind of more on the drag towards the sideline, maybe he has them. But, that was obviously an airmail. To me, That's not a 3rd and 15 down 2 scores like you were last week. Obviously, the second INT was horrible. Your arm ain't cashing that. No, nobody's arm is cashing that. Bad read. Yeah. I just I didn't like it. I didn't like it. I thought they maybe could have got him involved in a little bit more of the design run game.
Yeah.
Again, I'm still a limit, not eliminate, but living around the 5 to 6 range is kind of where I'm at. I know they have the quarterback draw. I mean, what do you have? Maybe 2, 3?
You had 4 carries in total.
And one of them was the scramble there late. And I want to hit on that.
I was about to ask you, do you think I thought he came up gimpy toward that left hamstring a little bit.
So I've gone back and watched it now a couple times. I initially thought he might have just been gassed. Like, in general. Like, if you watch him after the Pierce touchdown, he wants no sign of celebrating that.
Nope.
He just walks straight to the side. Like, I was like, is he cramping? Is he, like, what's going on here? Because then he goes to a knee in the huddle before the Hail Mary, I think. Or maybe it was the play prior to that. But you go back and you watch that a couple times. He definitely has some sort of grimace in that hamstring area after the 21-yard scramble.
Mm-hmm.
Unquestionably. So, it bears monitoring on the injury report. That could be one of those that maybe doesn't show up on the injury report, yet we get to Sunday against the Bears, and it's like, no design runs for Anthony Richardson this week? It's the Riley Leonard against Northern Illinois. Didn't run it in the second half after he was very effective running it in the first half. So, yeah, I'm literally writing it down as a question to ask Shane right now. That one has gotten more of my attention than I initially thought. I initially thought gassed, potentially cramp, something like that. But now the more I've watched it again, I'm like, and I mean, the Hail Mary still went far, but honestly, I thought it would go further.
Yeah.
On that play. So, worst start of his career. The good news is the bar's been, I think, higher. Like, it's not like it was an abomination. But I think what we saw yesterday, Eddie, is if I take away your greatest asset, can you methodically beat me? And yesterday was a no. It's a no on September 15th. There'll be plenty of more chances to create that the other way. But Green Bay was effective. And you can't have the recipe of no homers and strikeouts. Again, he hit the homers in week 1. He didn't have that many strikeouts, mostly ground outs in week 1. But you've got to make sure that you're not doing the backwards K looking. And yesterday he had 3 picks. And yesterday he put 2 other balls on the turf. And you didn't get, I mean, what was your longest pass?
Ooh, that's a good question.
30 to AD.
That was on the final drive of the game, right?
Right. And then it fall. Oh, no. That was the early 4th when Mitchell kind of went out of bounds. I want to say the Pittman pick followed that. Does that sound right? Yeah, Pittman was picked, or that was the Pittman pick, then 2 plays later. 22 was your next one. I mean, they only had 2 pass plays over 18 yards. Yeah, Mo Alley Cox for 22, and then A.D. Mitchell for 30. You can't live like that with him. Because, again, 50%, okay, let's say the drops don't happen. Let's call it 1 drop, 2 drops, 58%. If he's going to be 58%, the homers have got to be there. And the strikeouts cannot be there. So if you eliminate the drops, be Taylor's agent for a second, or Richardson's agent for a second. Malky Kawa clearly still on my brain. If you want to be Richardson's agent, you say, hey, way too many drops, man. You got to help my guy out. Okay, let's eliminate the drops. Let's say it becomes, again, 58% day. You still need the chunks and not the turnovers.
Correct.
And you didn't get either of them, really. You got, obviously, none of the big plays, and then you got too many turnovers. So, yeah, poor day for Richardson. Let's live in a 60-minute bubble, and let's see how he does bouncing back on Sunday.
Something we haven't talked about when we were talking about the you did not like the coaching, and let's tie it into what you did like. The Colts offense. That was Jonathan Taylor, 135 yards from scrimmage, and did not step onto the field in the 4th quarter. We'll get into that in a minute, but first things first, your overall assessment on how Taylor performed leading up to that 4th quarter.
Yeah, and let's start individually, like you said, Eddie, on Taylor, because I thought it was one of the best games of his career up until the 4th quarter. I mean, he was slicing, he was dicing, it was big plays. He had runs of 22 and 21 and 29 and 18. I mean, some catch and run. I mean, he was he looked like Wisconsin Badger Taylor. And I didn't think it was blocked like incredibly well. I mean, he definitely created some stuff, I guess is what I'm getting at. I don't want to act like the O-line was poor, but like I thought he looked like, the $42 million guy running it. He's over 100 yards going to the fourth quarter.
103
carries. That 8.6 yards per carry. He didn't touch it again. Third highest of his career. I mean, that's one of the best games of his career. So now let's go. Let's transition, Eddie.
Okay.
Transition to 3rd and 1, and transition to Taylor usage in the fourth quarter.
4th and 1 or 3rd and 1? It was 3rd and 1.
3rd and 1. Yeah, 3rd and 1 became 4th and 5. Fox comes back from the TV break, and the first thing they show is Taylor on the sideline.
Yep. This is right at the end of the 3rd quarter.
And I immediately thought I had just eaten too much Taco Bell. I mean, I just got that uneasy feeling. I immediately flashed back to 4th and 1. I'm looking around. No medical attention around Taylor. He's got his helmet on. I mean, those are all telltale signs of he's healthy. What did they say after the game? No injuries. Shane Steichen.
But something we'll monitor throughout the week.
Jonathan Taylor said no injuries. I don't get it. To me, it's another example of a short yardage situation. Shane Steichen overthinking it. And we saw it 4th and 1 last year with Tyler Goodson. So 3rd and 1 with Taylor. And on that drive, he had what? A run of 29, I think, and a big play like 18, I want to say, to start the drive. The 3rd quarter break happens. He's fresh. Plenty of swigs of Gatorade. And a speed option, you put out your slowest running back. For the speed option?
Mm-hmm.
For his first carry of the season?
Yeah.
A guy that at times in camp, I watch him and think, boy, there's some ball security things there. And what happens? A left-handed pitch from Richardson, if you want to get even more technical in the play. And Sermon bobbles it. And it's got no chance. And he gets blown up. And now 3rd and 1 has become 4th and 5.
And your kicker misses to the left again.
And your kicker misses from 50 plus again, as you just said. When I saw Sermon in the game, I thought bush push. I was like, oh, they're going to sneak this.
Bush push? You mean tush push?
Well, yeah. I mean, literally bush push. I think of literally the QB sneak. Because, some teams still do the QB sneak and then the running back just pushes them. They don't do like an outright, tush push that obviously Philly does. That's what I thought. I just assumed Richardson's 6'4" and 250 and Sermon's a big dude. And if you don't get it, like let's say you get stuffed, then it's 4th and 1 and now you bring Taylor on the field and you do whatever there. Like to me, the speed option also brings negative into it.
Oh, yeah.
Again, it can be a muff pitch. It can be kind of a fluky. It can bring a tackle for loss into it. If they blow it up, you're screwed. If they blow up a QB sneak, you live to see another down, and you might go for it. Because at that point of the game, to me, I still thought, 3rd and 1, here we go. This is critical. It's, 13-3 at that point?
Mm-hmm.
If you score there, again, now you've put Malik Willis into some sweating moments.
Yeah.
I didn't get it at all. Your slowest running back, his first carry of the season. I mean, the dude played 2 snaps week 1, Sermon. It's not like it's not like this is Zach Boss or however you want to describe it. I didn't get it at all. I did not get it at all. I think it is too much Shane Steichen on a Tuesday whiteboard overthinking it. Thinking he time and place. And, you look at DeAndre Smith, running back, I don't know. I don't get it.
Your snap distributions for your running backs, Jonathan Taylor, 29. That is 52%. Trey Sermon played 18 for 32%. And Tyler Goodson played 9 snaps for 16%. Okay.
Let's go to the fourth quarter usage. Okay?
So
because that was the first play of the fourth quarter.
Yeah, so the other 2 running backs, not named Taylor, had 27. So it was almost a 50-50 split between those 2, simply because Taylor didn't play a snap in the fourth quarter.
Okay, so the fourth quarter unfolds. Again, you missed that field goal. Green Bay eats up about 4 minutes. They kick a field goal. Colts get it back for 3 plays. We've mentioned those 3 plays actually already. That was the Mitchell ball for 30 yards. Richardson is incomplete looking for Pittman, and then he throws the pick on the very next play. Taylor was not out there for that 3-play series. Green Bay then eats up 6 minutes off the clock. They missed that field goal. So when the Colts get it back, it is 16-3 with 4:10 to go. And you really have only had the ball for 4 plays in that quarter. And one of those 4 plays was the 3rd and 1 stuff. So this is where I'm at with Taylor. Do you know the emoji that has the hair on fire or the head on fire?
Yes, sir. Very familiar with it.
3rd and 1, I'd probably send 10 of those emojis if you and I were texting. Overall fourth quarter Taylor usage, I'm probably sending 5 emojis of that to you. You follow me there?
Yes.
Mad, not as mad as 3rd and 1. And this is why. Jonathan Taylor can be a bit of a liability in the passing game. I don't think we can ignore that.
Yeah.
Really wasn't asked to do that out Wisconsin. He hasn't really been asked to do that a whole lot in the NFL. He's had some drops. Had at least 1, maybe 2 drops yesterday. So, I don't think we can discredit that. Honestly, this was kind of on the con list if we want to rewind to last year, Eddie. Last September, if you looked at the highest paid running backs in the league, Christian McCaffrey and Alvin Kamara, and then a big drop to everybody else.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do McCaffrey and Kamara do?
Everything.
3rd down, receiving back. Taylor doesn't do that. So, that was the con, on him as a Colts leverage sort of thing. So his lack of usage on passing downs doesn't stun me, is what I'm getting at. And I think you saw some of that yesterday. He's not the best. Now, having said that, you don't have Darren Sproles. You don't have Nyheim Hines.
No.
Thurman and Goodson?
You don't have Samaje Perine.
Yeah, anybody. Chase Brown for the Bengals. You don't have anybody that's this sort of change of pace, somewhat established pass catching back. Look at week 1. Taylor played 43 of 45 snaps at running back.
Yeah.
So it's not like there is this change of pace, 2-minute sort of back that the Colts have. So there is a part of me that looks at Taylor's rep. I still think you had enough time to sprinkle Taylor in. Let me be very clear on that. Now, when you look at the game flow, they didn't have a ton of plays there that they could do that. I still think you have moments where you could certainly run him or at least have the threat of him in the backfield. But, from a context standpoint, I think it's important to point out that, again, Taylor has not been a great receiving back. And at the same time, you weren't in a lot of situations to utilize him. You had 3 plays outside of the 3rd and 1 all the way to the 4:10 mark of the fourth quarter. And they were in straight passing at that point.
Oh, yeah.
They ran it. I think Sermon had that draw, right? Yeah, that draw on 3rd and 10 with 2:07 to go. Maybe that's a point where I guess you're in kind of hurry up at that point. I don't know. Maybe. Well, they're incomplete the play before. Now that I look at it, you could throw Taylor in there and run the draw, and it's a 2-minute warning. So that's why teams oftentimes run it right before the 2-minute warning. So
plus you set yourself up for 4th and manageable because at that point you have to go for it.
Right. It was 4th and 6. Nelson gets the false start, and then Richardson makes a great play to keep the game alive. So it is head scratching. Let me be clear. I don't think it is the biggest issue in the world. That's kind of how I view it. There is a level of me that does look at it in this way. If we want the Colts to be accountable, were you being accountable with Taylor? Were you benching him for the 4th and 4 drop? If it is really pass heavy, and that's what you're going to be in the fourth quarter, and he has already done it twice in a game where he has shown you issues of being a pass catching back, is that the Colts being accountable? Now, again, devil's advocate would say, well, why aren't they accountable here? Why aren't they accountable there? Hell, you could question it from the top of the organization down, but that would just be a question I would have with Taylor. In general, my thoughts, 3rd and 1, absolutely has to be out there in the fourth quarter, should be out there some, not the end of the world, in my opinion, when you provide a little context around it. Still was ugly to see. On the list of reasons why they lost, it's not in the top 5.
You have anything else to add, or would you like to get into Twitter questions?
Let's Twitter it.
Got 9 questions, I think, if my University of Indianapolis degree.
Greyhound, shout out.
Yeah, is correct. Creighton will start us off. As unlikely as it probably seems to fire your defensive coordinator after 2 games, if this continues, how many games would you guess until Gus Bradley is fired?
Midway point of the season, I don't know. When's the bye? The bye's in December.
Week 14.
Yeah.
The latest bye you could have.
The thing about it, when they fired Pep Hamilton kind of midway point of the year, Rob Chesney was in the building. Chesney had done it before. I'll bring this up with Gus. I'm trying to think of it from the Colts side of it, why they wouldn't do it. There's nobody on that staff that I look at and think that is. Remember they had John Fox on the defensive staff a few years ago?
Was he on the staff, or was he just like
he was
one
like
of those
senior assistant
advisor roles or something? Yeah.
So theoretically he could have called plays if you had fired. I mean, who at that point? I think it might have been Eberflus actually. Still, but who is that scapegoat? I mean, would it be sending a message more than actual changes? Do you feel like that's what you're doing there?
Because all the position coaches are Bradley guys, so I mean,
besides Charlie Partridge, which, and I'd say that Ron Nyles in the DB room and Richard Smith in the linebacker room there. I mean, they are longtime Gus Bradley assistants there. So, would it just be like, hey, we're going to change up a little bit philosophically of what we're doing? And like any answer to this, there are multiple pieces of the pie. Is it some on Gus? Undoubtedly. Is it some on personnel? Certainly as well. So to answer Creighton's question, like how much would you need to see it continue? I mean, we're talking yesterday was the worst rushing performance since 2000. I just figure 2000's a round year for the Colts. And week 1 was the 7th worst. I mean, if we're continuing down these historical trends, third worst. Yesterday was third worst. Week 1 was the 7th worst. Can't forget about the Jacksonville game during the Super Bowl run. If you're continuing down these historical trends, some answer come mid-October. But again, Eddie, it's like, I mean, you don't fire a GM.
No.
You don't cut starters. So that's where Gus would be the old scapegoat, I guess. Let me be clear for you. Just because I say scapegoat doesn't mean that Gus at fault. I mean, again, I asked Ballard back in January, why is Gus coming back? Is Gus coming back? Like, to me, you should have those questions. But do I think like he deserves the outright firing and nothing else is touched and Chris Ballard's a blue chip GM? No.
Jay says we need answers as to why Jonathan Taylor did not play in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, I will say this. Shane's answers post game I thought were pretty weak. I don't know. Maybe press them a little bit more. We'll see what happens today. Certainly it'll be on my list of questions, when we get around of that. I think it's a little bit fair, like more of an issue of what the Colts think of him as a pass catcher. And should you have done more to have more of a pass catcher? Was Evan Hall versus what's his name? Tyler Goodson a legit like pass catching competition?
Mm-hmm.
Really, they didn't touch running back much at all this offseason. Really at all. So, should you, if you have questions about JT there, should you have more of a guy like that? Baltimore clearly has that with Henry. Should there be more of that there? But again, I think I covered a lot.
Time for our second baseball analogy, and this one comes from Trent. You'll like this one, Kevin. If Anthony Richardson, it seems like he only has one pitch, the 100-mile-per-hour fastball. In your opinion, how hard is it for a player to come into the league and essentially add a new pitch to their arsenal? Will Anthony Richardson always be a one-pitch pitcher? Can this be developed?
It's a great question. My thoughts are I think it's hard. I think most QBs are pretty finished products as throwers as they enter the NFL. But again, Richardson is so young. And
inexperienced.
And I do wonder if could that develop. I mean, look at Josh Allen. I mean, Josh Allen's a poster child of it. When you look at completion percentage, if you want to focus on that stat, he is the poster child. I will say the drops today, Eddie, or yesterday, they weren't like, was it Jabba Chamberlain? Was that the guy that used to throw gas?
Yes, that's one of them.
They weren't those drops. Like Richardson has the fastball where it's like, is he really supposed to catch that?
Or Roldis Chapman for those more up to date.
Thank you there. Thank you. So that's where I would go. But Trent, I mean, this is a question again. Will Hewlett, his QB coach, has brought this up before. On the wins with the velocity, when and where to use that stuff. It's just, a little bit's timing too. Again, him and the AD Mitchell thing, that first little out pattern to AD, it just seemed off. But yes, you got to know when to use that. When do you, I've used this analogy before, and it's probably a poor one. But again, when to hit the lob wedge and when to, punch the 5-iron in there. Some balls have got to be the Ashton Doolin frozen rope touchdown. Other balls have got to be more of the lofted variety where you're trying to make a play vertically.
Nyles and Z have two of the same questions, so we just looped them together.
We got a lot of similar questions this week, so
that's right.
Hopefully, if you don't see yours, it's been mashed together, or we'll save it to Wednesday.
This was a systematic failure yesterday so give a blame pie for accountability between the general manager, the coaching staff, and the players. Lean towards coaching, but plenty of pie to go around.
Yeah, top down for me. I mean, they all deserve huge chunks.
Top down being GM.
Owner. Owner.
Okay.
Frankly, I've said it before. I thought, to me, Ballard did not deserve year 6, 7. I guess now we're into 8. But he has a boss that chooses to look at things through very rose-colored glasses, and frankly, just in a way, he's just lying to his fan base. When you call a blue chip GM, and yet you're currently in the worst division playoff win drought your franchise has been in 30 years. You're just lying. Now, I thought specifically to yesterday, I thought you were thoroughly outcoached. And again, I've not said that a lot in the Steichen era. Thoroughly. And at the same time, I'm leaving some pieces of the pie to the players. You're paying some dudes some pretty high money. Eddie, let's go back to the reliables. Guys on the side of your building. Guys you're paying top of position in the NFL to. Nelson, 2 critical penalties. Pittman, Taylor, from a drop standpoint in the pass catching game. You want to move Taylor off that list because he did run it so well? Kenny Moore, I thought a couple of missed tackles. And, a chance to make a play in the passing game. Wasn't able to make it. Matt Gay, certainly as well. So, there's plenty of pie to go around. So
how would you percentage it?
Are we talking just Sunday or are we talking big picture? If we're talking...
That's a good question.
Yeah,
Well, you always say you like to focus on the 60 minutes and not the big picture, so let's go.
Right. But so it's hard to say, how much of it is overall philosophy and GM. It's hard to, boil down 60 minutes of football into that. I guess I'll say this. I split them up pretty evenly to yesterday, and I have coaching much higher than I usually do. I thought yesterday was a bigger coaching pie than anything else. I guess I'll go there. Not to totally cop out. I would say coaching is probably right at 50% if you're going to divide them into 3 slices. Maybe even higher. Malik Willis has been a Packer for 19 days. Jeff Hafley's been a defensive coordinator for 1 year.
You okay over there?
I need a sip of water.
You need to think about Notre Dame.
How about that effort? Are we back?
No.
We have to get the drum for at least a couple months. Purdue's got to give us a drum.
Why?
137 years of football. If you're a Purdue fan, you got to be thinking to yourself, Ryan Walters is supposed to coach defense, right? Purdue never made Riley Leonard sweat, and the Colts never made Malik Willis sweat. Oh, man. I guess I should.
Is your blood boiling over there? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm a little, yeah. I know. I need some Taco Bell after I talked about it earlier.
I wouldn't want Taco Bell either. Cameron would like to know, was this the game, the biggest indictment on the Gus Bradley and Chris Ballard era? I could probably rush for 50 yards on this run defense, and the secondary got torched by a D4 quarterback.
D4? Unbelievable. That's a slap in the face of Liberty, right?
Yeah.
Auburn, isn't that where Malik Willis started? Yeah, Mixon and Jacobs put him into Canton. Big indictment for sure. That's how you respond, They pounded it right at you. And again, we continue to see the 10 defensive linemen, Eddie. Now, some of it this week I could understand due to injury, but yes, we're going to play in waves, and we're going to be built through the trenches, and they just ran it right at you without the threat of a pass.
And we haven't even mentioned the DeForest Buckner injury either.
Yeah, I know the early reports are MRI was negative, but boy, that ankle sprain looked bad, did it not?
Yes.
Bad. So yeah, add that to the insult.
I'm honestly surprised there wasn't something broken with how he just went right down on it.
Same.
Craig would like to know, when does the accountability start? Someone should seriously lose their job, paycheck, and or starting assignment based off of that effort. A normal NFL team would have beaten the Packers by 40. They did nothing except run the ball when everyone knew they would run the ball, had penalties, and didn't convert in the red zone. The coaching staff deserves a ton of blame for that effort.
Well, they certainly do. I think you got to go top down. Matt LaFleur's emotion post-game, I think, told you everything you needed to know.
Oh, yeah.
About, how much he knew that they outcoached the Colts. I could not believe that into the first half. when Green Bay stopped trying to move it and the Colts said, we're not taking timeouts either. I was like, wait, are both teams really not going to do anything here?
It was a good old Western standoff.
Literally. I mean, Green Bay allowed 34 in week 1, Eddie. You know? I mean, and I get the Phillies got some potency, but had you presented to me before the game.
I think field conditions might have had a little bit of that too.
Sure. Had you presented to me before the game, hey, Green Bay's going to score 16 points. I would have said, okay. You know, that's about what I would guess. You can't get to 17? 2 of 10 scoring drives? 1 play on Green Bay's side of the field in the first half, and that 1 play's a pick?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when does the accountability start?
Well, I would say this. I would guess not anytime soon, based off how public comments have operated. But again, trying to predict Jim Irsay, good luck.
Yeah.
So, that's where I'm a little torn on it. But I don't see anything happening, whatever, anytime
immediate
soon. But, I mean, it's not like Irsay's been in a ton of these positions before in his ownership. Obviously, he felt like he was needing to can Frank Reich in the middle of the season. But, man, he loves Chris Ballard. Loves him. And then where? Gus Bradley's a Chris Ballard guy, right? Shane Steichen likes him. Like, I mean, it just, Steichen obviously kept him. It's just, the thing that's odd to me is, I guarantee you, Eddie, you give Shane Steichen truth serum, and you say, what are the toughest defenses to get ready for? Gus Bradley's be nowhere to be found.
Oh, it's probably 32 out of 32.
Nowhere. I guarantee that if you gave Shane Steichen that truth serum, he would say that. There's nowhere near a Brian Flores or however you want to describe, again, what are difficult defenses to get ready for. And that, to me, is what I don't get.
There's no blitzing. It doesn't seem like they don't stunt. And when they do blitz, it's very obvious and it's not disguised. The coverages aren't different. It's all very vanilla. And that's pretty much how Mike Tannenbaum put it in last week and when he ripped Gus Bradley on his podcast.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, he did.
The GM Shuffle.
Yep, he did. Ripped him.
3 Twitter questions left. Gavin, Stanley, Pike, and Daniel, all with a similar question, so you get lumped in together. Their question is about the Anthony Richardson and Adonai Mitchell connection, as it looks like their timing is struggling to develop. At this point, reading AR's body language, it seems as though it's more AD not being in the right spot and or cutting his routes short. What do you see? Here's to Josh Downs, hopefully returning next week.
Oh, boy. Ain't that the truth? Cutting the route short. Yeah.
There's times where I feel like he just stops, like he's just jogging.
Do we use the E word?
What's the E word?
Effort?
No?
Too harsh?
No, not at all.
It's a question. Just a question that I have. I just I didn't like what I saw. And again, if you would have told me like, hey, AD Mitchell's gonna have early season struggles, I would have assumed it was due to him, a bunch of slot routes. I mean, these are not really slot routes.
No.
I think the Colts have tried to keep him into kind of favorable situations for him. Obviously, the huge drop on 3rd and 8, running through routes, finishing routes, however you want to describe it. I mean, right now, let's say Josh Downs plays on Sunday.
Yeah.
And we get back into the Pierce-Mitchell debate. I mean, right now, Pierce has got to play an overwhelming majority compared to Mitchell.
He's played really well through 2 weeks.
He's got to play an I mean, right now, it's no split. So, I don't like, I know AD's words after the game, last week, and they all sounded great, but the actions this Sunday, lack of confidence and knowing the route, yeah.
If you had pulled somebody off the street who hadn't watched Colts football leading up to this season, they would probably tell you, and they've watched the first 2 weeks, that Alec Pierce was the guy getting paid the Michael Pittman dollars.
Seriously.
So shout out to Pierce for, having a great camp and then building off of that through 2 weeks. 2 questions left. Garrett, what do you view as more likely out of these scenarios for this season? Chris Ballard trades draft capital and roster pieces to bolster the secondary and other defensive holes, or Jim Irsay pulls the plug and fires Chris Ballard, Gus Bradley, and other coaches responsible for the failures. along with trading other talent to gain draft capital for a new general manager. I don't want to believe this is the status quo we should be used to for this season, but I'm not sure the last time I've been this embarrassed to spend time watching this team. Thanks for the work as always. Hoping 2 weeks doesn't mean the season is doomed.
Hey, last year's division champ, 0-2. 2014 Colts, 0-2.
Plus, we had been talking about it all off season and leading up to the season that the schedule was front loaded.
Yes.
And
now,
like I said, I still had them 9-8, sometimes 10-7 after an 0-2 start.
Granted, Houston is 2-0, and if they beat you next month, they're already up 3 games on you. It's just wild. Yeah. I mean, it's wild how, but boy, the rest of the AFC South certainly look like the division of old. You know, trades are so unlikely. I mean, and that's league wide. They're just so unlikely. But again, I'll go back to what I was saying. I mean, he's as predictable as Notre Dame football in 2014 or 2024. So good luck with that. You know, how do you view firing the GM if we play out that hypothetical? You know, how do you view it? Does that mean the new GM comes in and he's told that Shane Steichen is safe? Are you setting Anthony Richardson back? Are you done with the Richardson era? Again, these are all just crazy hypotheticals I'm throwing out here, but like these are all the real conversations that you have to think about if you're going to do those sorts of things. Living now in the 2024 bubble, you are 0-2. You have 2 at home against a Chicago team that I thought Caleb Williams was going to a Houston hospital at one point last night with how much he got hit. And then Pittsburgh is undefeated, yet they can't score. So
no.
What this does, though, Eddie, is it just starts to shrink margin for error. That's what it does. Again, I had a 1-1 start, but you know I didn't think DeForest Buckner might be out for a month or whatever the diagnosis is going to be on him. And now all of a sudden, let's just like right now, if you said the Colts split the next 2 games, if you asked Vegas, that's probably what they would predict, right? I think I saw last night they're a 1-point favorite over the Bears. I think the Steelers would probably be like a 1-point favorite. Let's just call a split. Now you're 1-3 going into 4-5 on the road. And what's Anthony Richardson on the road? Is that a storyline?
It's a good question.
Like, we're just into unknowns. So, you know, what is a more likely scenario? Ballard trades draft capital and roster pieces to bolster the secondary, or Irsay pulls the plug and fires all those people? No, I mean, if you made me pick one or the other, it would be the trade, but I would put both of them at extremely, extremely small percentages.
The Colts are favored right now by 1.5, and the total is at 44.5. I would take the under.
Oh, gosh. Yeah, I would guess the under would be smaller than that, unless they see the defenses can do something.
Final question comes from our friend Irwin. I've always said that Chris Ballard should have been fired when Frank Reich was. Not sure why he wasn't. How hot is his seat right now? Can't imagine more performances like the first 2 weeks will be accepted. My guess is Gus Bradley will be the initial scapegoat, but the GM's fingerprints are all over this mess. Thanks again.
We've hit on this a lot throughout the podcast. I'll go here. I thought early in the offseason, I thought the seat was meeting my standard of warm. You know, I think I've mentioned to you before, I think the seat should be extremely warm.
It was on like, what, setting 1, setting 2, and now you're probably on for sure setting 2?
The seat warmer analogy. And again, I would have canned both. I mean, if you're going to can Reich, I would have canned Ballard. I'm a big believer in the GM and the head coach need to be together. Because now you get into these awkward moments like you theoretically have right now. Like, wait, what should you do here? Again, early in the offseason, I thought. But then the more and more I heard Jim Irsay publicly talk, I'm like, wait a minute. That doesn't sound like it. You know, if Irsay won it, and honestly, I think the fan base would appreciate some honesty in public comments. Would you not? Would you not appreciate hey, fans, we know right now we're not living up to the standard. We have not been an organization that is winning AFC South titles, that is making January playoff runs, that's winning playoff games to the level that we need to be at. And that needs to change. And we'll do everything in our power to get back to that. You can go ahead and say, hey, we think we have a good football team this year. We're optimistic about it, blah, blah, blah. But I think the acknowledgement of where you're at as a franchise, as opposed to just flat out lying or deceiving or having the craziest PR spin on it that you could.
Yeah.
To me, it's just a disservice to your fan base. And I just think a little bit more public acknowledgement would go a long way. Not upper quartile, blue chip GM, Michael Jordan misses shots, et cetera, et cetera. Because again, the reality is you are in a dark. I mean, how old are you, Eddie?
I turned 26 in 8 days.
You go up 5 to 10 years from you. This is one of the worst playoff-related droughts this franchise has been in.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when you compare that around the NFL, I think I did it before the start of the season. I want to say 25 teams have won a division title since you last have. I think 21 have won a playoff game since you last have. That is still bottom half, bottom whatever in those cases. So even if you want to compare it to a smaller sample size, not go back all the way to the mid-90s or early 90s, it still is not at the level that you're at. I think that public acknowledgement would go a long way. But, Irwin asked, how hot is the seat? I mean, you hear those comments. That doesn't sound hot at all to me. Yeah?
Mm-hmm.
That sounds like walking into some AC. All right, will they have to go silent count this weekend? You laugh.
I know I laugh.
You laugh.
I know I laugh. I don't know.
You laugh. You seen these ticket prices?
I have. I laugh because it's a sad reality that we have to ask those type of questions.
So basically, upper level, we're talking 600 level, Titans game later this year going for about a $50 a ticket.
Mm-hmm.
Pittsburgh, for example, next week, that's about $100 a ticket. And we know there'll be a lot of black and gold in there.
Always is.
Black and yellow, I guess. And then for Chicago, it's north of 200. There's going to be a lot of orange in there, man.
By the way, when you were looking at the snap counts, did you look at defense at all?
Sure. Yeah.
Did you see Jalen Carlisle's got 31 snaps defensively?
Yeah, I assume that's just because they were in base so much.
And at times, they went to 5 defensive linemen.
Yeah, because what was the corner split without Juju? Yeah, Womack 20, Flowers 19. So
yeah.
If you add those two together, and by the way, they just kept Kenny Moore in the slot. Womack and Flowers played outside. That's 39 for them. 39 to 70, yeah.
And then you had Cross miss the one play where he was down on the field, came right back in the next play.
So literally that 100% checks out.
By the way,
Flowers and Womack combined for 39. And Carlisle, you said, played 31?
Yes.
So that's 70 combined. So 39 snaps, you were in nickel, 31 you were in base, and you played 70 total defensive snaps.
We didn't touch on this either. Leatu Latu has a hip injury.
Yeah, I don't like hips at all. Insert a Shakira comment here. Those hips a little bit different there. Yeah, I don't like speed pass rush or hip. I didn't see it. Of course, I'd have to go back and look at it. Latu pretty quiet, Eddie.
Yeah, the fumble recovering, that was about it.
Yeah, obviously you weren't in a ton of obvious pass rushing situations, but that was it there. So that'll be worth monitoring. Those defensive line injuries starting to pick up a little bit. You got anything else?
Julian Blackman, do you have any idea if he'll be back this week or not?
Shoulder. That was a question I wanted to ask Shane. Obviously they didn't put him on IR. Shane didn't think it was serious, so those are good signs. But again, I thought Nick Cross did a nice job tackling. I do mean that. Again, secondary playmaking is still an issue for me, but I thought Nick Cross did a nice job there. Rodney Thomas getting the start there for those that missed it, because there wasn't a lot of that.
Shane Steichen will talk 2:30 Eastern time Monday today as we record this, and then coordinators will talk tomorrow afternoon, and then they'll be back on the practice field Wednesday, and then we'll have a pod for you later Wednesday afternoon.
I think you get that Catalan crew again. Catalan, who was it? Tiki Barber and McCourty?
Correct.
I think you got them again here.
That is correct.
Sunday at 1. He's Eddie Garrison. I'm Kevin Bowen. Everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you on Wednesday.